Welcome to Industrial PLC Applications. This video is an introduction to the Micro850 Simulator PLC located in the Connective Component Workbench application. We're going to create a new project and we're going to be using the simulator to do our logic. The simulator works as a software tool to allow you to create programs, run logic, and to see if your logic basically works. It has limitations and there are some trips that can happen, so we're going to go through and try to make this as seamless as possible and easier to work with. So I've got a project open and I'm going to just create a new one, and I'm going to name it simulator _demo. And notice on the location I'm putting it onto a D drive. In a future video I'll show you how to set that up so that it's automatically where you want it as opposed to where the computer puts it, which in my case it will default it to the cloud, and I don't want my files on the cloud. So you can also hit the browse button and direct it to go into a particular location. So we're going to hit create and we'll say yes please, and then it's going to give us the usual blue background with the new pop-up box saying, well, what controller do you want to use, what else are you putting in your project. So we're going to hit controllers, we're going to hit the Micro850 and we'll do the LC50, and when you do that you'll notice down at the bottom it has simulator. So it's a 2080 LC50 48QWB simulator. And it gives you a little picture of the icon, tells you the version, which is in this case unchangeable, it's 12. And it gives you an idea of how many slots it has, expansion, etc. This is a simulation of one that you could install. You could go out and purchase an LC50 48QWB, and what you see is what you would get. So we're going to hit select and we're going to say add to project. And so far so good. It looks pretty boring. So we're going to, before we can do anything with it, we need to create a program. And we'll do ladder logic. And I'm going to re-click it and go rename. Simulation number 1, and I'm going to double click. Typical blank run. Now to add bits quickly, first instructions, if you highlight the outside rung and then go to your bit instruction selection and just click on the normally open or the normally closed contacts, they'll put them in the next logical position for them. Outputs are automatically put to the far right. So I'm not going to need this one for a moment. I'm going to delete that. You just have to delete a mistake. You just click on the instruction, not on the variable portion of it, on the bottom. It gives you the green box. Press the delete key and it disappears. So the yellow attention triangle is bringing our attention to the fact that we have not given it a name, and I'm just going to give it the input available to me, digital input 0. Now keep in mind, working with the simulator, this particular simulator has a lot more inputs than most of the MicroLogic's 850 family. So this is giving us, it has 28, which is a lot of inputs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select digital input 0, and it's happy with that. And on my outputs, notice it defaults to the logical variables in its memory that can be used as outputs. And in this case, I've got digital output 0. You can make a mistake. I'm just going to make this mistake on purpose. you can accidentally select an input, and this will cause a fatal failure. It will not let you use an input. You must use an output. So when you're doing your outputs, if it's a physical output, make sure that you use the drop down. It's a little easier. That way you don't accidentally, if you go to variable selector, it'll populate the same thing. Now it's gone to the default because I've already had that. But if you're not paying attention, you're selecting it, oh, I want output 3. It's very easy to select the digital input, and it doesn't appear there's a mistake until you go to build it. And once it does that, it says, no, that's not, I can't do that. I can't turn on an input. PLC doesn't have any arms to reach around and push a button. So we're going to change that back. We can use the variable selector or use the drop down. I'm just going to use the drop down because it's quick and easy. The drop down does have the disadvantage that it does not populate with any aliases. If you want an alias, you're going to have to use the variable selector and type the alias that you want. I have a simple run with one input and one output. So we're going to turn on the simulator, and up on your menu bar you should see a small icon that looks like the simulator, and if you put it over, it says start the Micro850 Simulator. So I'm going to click on that, and this box appears. Notice that has the on-off button beside it. That's telling you that it's not energized, and here we don't have it energized. But before we do that, we have to establish the communication path it's going to take. Now, I know this seems kind of strange because the simulator exists on the PC that you're working with, your laptop, and how does it going to connect to something that doesn't physically exist? Well, we have an IP address, and I'm going to drop that down and explain a couple of things here. So the particular laptop I'm using has more than one Ethernet port available. So the default, because I'm using a wireless LAN card, the default is 192.168.0 and 1. But with the Micro Simulator, it says, okay, I'm going to grab a port. And this is not too unlike what happens when you're trying to connect using Ethernet with the actual MicroLogix. The MicroLogix uses DHCP protocol, in which case it basically flags the Ethernet system and says, I'm looking for an IP. Can you kind of give me one, please? And it allows the routers to assign it an IP address. And this is basically doing saying, well, I'd like something, please. So in this case here, it's been assigned by the wireless LAN card the IP address 192.168.0 and 196. The other one is in this particular case, is another card that I have, and this is from the last time I used it using the wired system. The last Allen Bradley product I talked to was 169.254.169.79, and it's kind of remembered that, but I'm not using the wired one, I'm using the wireless. Down on the bottom there's another one that says 127.0.0.1, and it's a software loopback interface. Don't use that one. I've not had any success with it, and my understanding is it's basically creating its own internal feedback loop, and that was for the older slower PCs. So just stick with the wireless one or the first one that you have. If you only have one, take it, and then we'll give it your IP address. So I'm just going to hit OK. So we've got to remember that number. It shouldn't be too hard, but we're going to need to look for it when we go to connect to it. So to turn it on, there's a couple other things you can do. There's a tool, that this little box here with the setup on the X, and what that does, it allows you to save or change things, like keep inputs after change into program mode. You can select that and turn that on. It's basically, if you've set an input, when you go back and forth and change it, let's just change that. Show the icon on the taskbar, enable external I/O access. Do not show mode change warning dialog box. Okay, so we're going to go Oakley Dokley. And the other thing you can do is you can clear the memory if you've been working on something and you want to change the program. But I'm just going to turn the device on by clicking the little button here. Notice that that hasn't changed much. Everything's good. We're communicating. Now, the trainers that we've been using in class 3, 7, and 13 are normally closed. And you'll notice I just moved the mouse and clicked on the actual input to energize it. That's how the simulator works. Basically, it's its own window, and if you have multiple screens, you can move it to another screen and leave it there so it's not interfering and blocking your vision on the program. Or what you can do is you can reduce the size of the main program, and let's see if we can get that to do what it's supposed to do. Restore it down, and of course it'll disappear because it goes into the background. But you can kind of play around with it visually. I just leave it the way it is. Personally, I have more than one, so I put this off to the side on another processor, but that's fine. So we've got 3 of those there. We have the 3 buttons that simulate the little tiny switch on the bottom of the Micrologics, the program, remote, and run. So program mode, when you've selected that, it'll accept you the program, and you'll be able to make changes to the program, but it will not run. All the outputs are turned off. Remote, there's a developer's version of the software that allows you to do online edits while it's running. And with Allen Bradley Pro PLCs, the remote allows you to run the program, but also allows you to periodically go in and make changes to it while it's running. If you select run mode, you cannot change the program. You can look at it, you can look, but you can't touch. Usually most places will leave it in this little tiny switch in remote mode to allow them to access it quickly and change it. Where it's absolutely critical that things do not get changed, then they set it off to run. And that's a function of the company that's working with the PLC, who owns the PLC. They make those decisions. So I'm going to put that in remote because I'm going to need to make some changes later on. And I'm not going to close, I'm just going to click on the background and it's just appeared. So even though I've set this up, I'm a new project, now the simulator has an IP address assigned to it, but the software doesn't know. So we have to go to our first 850 page up here, and we're going to go to our connection path. So there's our little pencil, and we're going to go browse, and you should have a default Ethernet driver set up. So we're going to click on the plus sign, and there's that 169 I talked to us before. There's 192. Okay, can't find those. The next one below it, 192, 168, and 196, that's the one we had before. Now I can tell because the icon is not red X'd. Some get into the habit of trying to open up that little plus sign because they keep doing that. You don't need to do that. You just need to highlight it. Once you see this turn to OK, then it's recognized, it's done all the handshaking, and says if you want to go, hit go. So we're going to hit OK. We don't need this connection path anymore because it's up here in the top left corner. So I know that this is all good. That's the name of my computer typey thing, and there's the IP address, and it's all good. So I'm going to go close. Now these buttons will work. So I only have a single program, and I'm just going to say, okay, we're going to download it. Okay. It's in remote mode, that's good. We got our build time, it did not fail, that's excellent. And now it's asking us, do you want to download it with that or the project values? I'm going to do download. The simulator is not as fast as working with the actual device, simply because you're kind of sharing and swapping with files. Now there's a couple things that happens with the simulator that may cause you some grief, and I'm hoping it happens now, just which is going to seem kind of weird. I'm hoping that it faults out. So let's go to our simulator. Yep, still downloading. Down here we got the progress bar. You have to be patient. Okay, it's downloaded it. Normally what you'll see is the same thing you do on a processor. It asks you want to change to run mode, and we're going to go yes. And there's our program. It doesn't look like it's doing anything. I've got the whole thing just nothing's going on. So this is where we go back to our simulator, and we're going to turn on some bits. This is 0, 0. So again, I just go to the top, which is all my inputs. I click on it. It turns red. Output turns red, and we're good. Now, what can sometimes happen? You can get a fault with the simulator, and it can be very frustrating because when you see this yellow attention triangle, you go to it and it says there's a watchdog error. So there's two things you can do to fix that. Every time you turn the simulator on, you need to set Windows affinity to it. If I turn this off, it closes it, and if I turn it back on again, I have to set the affinity. So I'm going to turn it off by hitting the X button and close it, and I drop everything out. Connection was lost. Okay, so now I'm going to start it again. I know this seems kind of annoying. Turn that on, and I'm going to set the affinity of this. Now what the affinity is the number of CPUs built into your laptop's main core chip that Windows provides access, gives the simulator access to these set number of CPUs. Now the funny thing is, you would think the more CPUs, the better, but the program, you can see how kind of slow it's running. The time that Windows does all the negotiating through the software to the Ethernet and bounces back an echo basically to say that it's talking, all that takes a lot of time as far as the software is concerned. And what happens is, within all these processors, all Micrologics, all PLCs, they have an internal watchdog, and what it does is, after the first scan of any project, it looks at it and says, okay, that took me X number of seconds, and it adds some milliseconds to it. Basically, this is kind of super simplified, but it then checks that every time it scans through that the program was satisfied within reason of that watchdog, and if it doesn't, something has gone wrong. and it will create an error, and that's just to bring it to your attention that, hey, something's not gone right here. We've done the scan and it's not meeting our scan time. Something's not right, so check it. So what we want to do is we want to speed that up by not having Windows kind of play around and figure out which CPU. So to do that, we're going to hit Control-Alt-Delete on our keyboard, and we're going to go to the Task Manager. And you can see the programs that's running, and there's our Micro850 Simulator. It looks like it's an entirely different program running. It's a different application than the actual Workbench. So we're going to right click on it, and we're going to go to Details. And then down at the bottom it reappears, so we're going to right click on it, and we want to set the affinity. So by default it selects them all, so we're going to deselect it, and I'm just going to assign a couple to it. Well, then make it 4, we'll be generous, and go OK. When that's done, we can close that, and it doesn't look like anything's transpired. Nothing's changed. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to download our program again, because I still have my path. I haven't changed that. It's still there. The build succeeded. Notice that those other 3 inputs were shut off because I've turned it off and I've reestablished it. This has no idea, as far as this is concerned, it's a brand new Micrologix processor. Yep, we'll download. I'm not mistaken, it's not, maybe it's my imagination, but it seems to have been just a little bit faster than the last time. Change it to that, yes please. And when I go to the goldenrod page, it tells me I'm live and in color. And nothing's happening, so I'm going to go to my simulator again, and I'm going to turn on 0, and there it is running as it was before, and there has been no error. Now there's another thing you can do. I'm going to close this again. That really helps. And if you go up to the top, we have some selections here, and one of them we want to go to is our, I believe it's Tools, and we want to go to Options. Now this is something that you would not normally do on your own. Like this, if you were working for a company, they would have an engineering department, and they would specify certain things. And we're doing this simply because it is the simulator, and it does have this nasty tendency of faulting out. And if you look down here on this page here, we go to the CCW application preferences, and this is where you can set up your own default folder. If you want it to save it to all your programs to a USB stick, then this is where you would set that up. If you are happy with it going on the cloud, that's where it ends up going on the cloud. So you can set that up there, but the other thing you can do is under here where it has communication, it has a set watchdog of 3,000 or 3 seconds, 3,000 milliseconds. So you can go up to 15 seconds, which is really long. But I found by moving it up to 5,000, I haven't had the same number of fault outs. And I'm not sure, because this is an environment with it's talking to Windows, and that just by adding that couple extra seconds, it might just be enough time for software and Windows to agree and allow it to not prevent it from creating a watchdog error. I've got no documentation to support that, but I'm going by experience and it seems to work. So once you've done that, you can continue to write more logic. I'm going to turn my simulator back on. Where did it go? Oh, I turned it off, that's why. So we've got that saved. I'm going to turn my simulator back on. Unfortunately, I'll have to go back and change the affinity, but I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to turn it on. If you keep running into errors, that's what you're going to have to do. So we'll have to 3, 7, and 13. And when you go to download it, it's going to ask you if you want to change values. And with that, you have to be careful which one you choose. So I'm going to go into detail in another video, but for the most part, just hit download. There'll be a time when you'll need to download with values, but when you do your downloads, for the first part, working with either the simulator or the trainer, just use download. Do not use download with values. Okay. Build succeeded. And our program. So we downloaded the program, and before I did that, I turned these inputs on, and they're still on. Nothing in the program's changing it. But that's one of the reasons why I use download, not download with values, because if it was downloading with values, the value in our program we wrote, all these would be off. So it didn't overwrite them. So if I turned that on, our input came on, our output came on, perfect. Okay, so let's say that you've written a program and you want to try it actually on the trainer. So you've downloaded the program, you've installed it on a home laptop, and you're playing with it at home, and you want to come in and use the trainer to try your program. Okay, my program works, so I want to try it on the trainer. I'm going to turn this off for a second. There we go. On and off button doesn't work. That's weird. Okay, so what you're going to need to do is, before you can download it, there's 2 steps. One, you'll need to change this. You'll need to change the path, which we just did the same as in class. We just hit the pencil, use the drop down. The other thing you have to do is you have to change the device. So you go up to the device, and here there's change controller. And what this does is it gives you the option, this is what you have right now, what do you want it to be? So you use the drop down, and the one we're using in the class is the LC50 24QBB. So there's the LC50 24QBB. Notice it looks different. Hit Oakley Dokley, and whenever you do that with the simulator, you'll see the big one, and then when you change it, it becomes a small one. If you end up doing a project the lab to be submitted using the simulator, if you make me have to change it, I'm not going to be a very happy camper. Anyway, so all that's done. Notice now that we've changed it, the connection path is completely gone, so I have to establish that. Same as before. And in this case here, this 192, that's what I'm going to use as its default. I've got X's across the board because it's not talking to any real particular trainer or PC or PLC, pardon me. So I'm just going to select that one anyway. It doesn't give me OK, so I can't complete the path because it's trying to talk to it and it can't do it. So you'll have to do that once you hook it up to the trainer itself. If you have it here, you can put that into the path, but it's not going to accept it. You double click it. Oh, it does accept it. Okay, I stand corrected. Close. And now that's set up for you. If you know that's the IP address of the trainer you'll be using, then you're all set to go, and then you can go up and hit File. When you're saving files, normally you'll hit Save and you'll create your own SLIN file, but in this case, export the file. If you just do that all the time, you're not going to run into any grief. And I'm going to go down to my own personal file folder, which is on D, and this is Simulator Demo 1, and I'm going to say okay, Sim1 is my short name. Exporting a project, exporting to project location not allowed. Oh, learning has occurred. Okay, we'll try that again. Export. And we'll go up to CCW, and I'm going to go Sim1. Project has been exported. Oop, there it is. And that's basically it. So you can see how we start the simulator. There's a couple of tricks that we can do to prevent faulting it out. And when you're working with it, in any situation in the class, if you're going to relate it to the trainer, make sure that 3, 7, and 13 are turned on to simulate the normally closed contacts.